Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Michael with Imperative Finance. So have you ever gone through life thinking something means one thing, and then all of a sudden someone tells you something, and you have this grand epiphany, and you can no longer think of that one thing the same way? That's how I was with 401k's and IRAs, effectively government qualified retirement plans. The way these plans work is that you put a certain amount of money into the account tax-free, and once you pull the money out of the account, you are taxed at that time. So the logic then is that you'll be at a lower tax rate in the future than you are at this time. Now, these do have some limitations. For example, you can only put a certain amount of money into the account each year. With that said, though, most financial planners will agree that this is a good investment decision. I haven't come across too many people that will argue this point. However, that all changed when I read Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. Quite frankly, he made some very intriguing arguments, and I found them to be extraordinarily interesting, so I wanted to share them with you guys in this video. Now, I want to be clear, I'm in no way suggesting this as professional financial advice. You should consult a financial advisor before making any major decisions about your investments. I also want to make the case that if your employer is offering matching contributions to your 401k, then you should more than likely, and by more than likely I mean 99% chance, that you should definitely do that, all right? The reason is because that is a 100% return on your money, and that's gonna be very, very difficult to find anywhere else. So if you put $1,000 into the account, your employer will also put $1,000 into the account. That means you just doubled your money for investing into the account, and that, again, is gonna be very, very hard to find in any investments elsewhere. Number one, these plans are made for the non-rich, all right? Why do I say it like that? The fact of the matter is, before I hit you with any statistics, we can all agree that there is a very small percentage of rich people on this planet relative to the amount of poor and middle class. Well, what does that mean? That means that the government will be encouraged to make a plan that affects the mass amount of people. The mass amount of people, once again, is the poor and middle class. Now, what's very interesting is that the specifics of the plan itself actually confirm this. So for example, under a traditional IRA, once again, you put pre-tax dollars into the account now, and then 40 years from now, once you can pull the money out, you are hoping that your tax rate is lower. Well, what does that really mean? That means that you are hoping that you are poor at that time in terms of how much money you have coming in relative to how much money you have coming in now, right? Let me put it this way. The rich don't care about this. What they care about is holding assets which pay them passive income, and that passive income, due to the tax laws under that asset, allow them to pay hardly any taxes on that money. So they plan to ideally have this passive income coming in once they quote-unquote retire from their job. They don't even hold ordinary income jobs, so they're really not concerned with this plan at all. What's even more interesting is that if you're not planning to be rich, right, so you're not planning to hold all these assets, all that, you still might lose under this scenario in the sense that you might not actually be at a lower tax rate in the future. As it turns out right now, you might have tax deductions from your kids. Well, they're gonna grow up, and so you lose that tax deduction. You lose the deductions from your employer. You lose access to all these deductions, and so all of a sudden, your effective tax rate may be higher. Not only that, but the cost of living might actually push you into higher tax brackets at that time. For example, if it costs $75,000 to afford your standard of living now, in 40 years from now, once you retire, it might cost $200,000. More than likely, that will be in a higher tax bracket. Not only that, but Tom identifies that tax brackets rarely keep up with real inflation. So what Tom is trying to point out is that there is actually a risk that you do not end up in a lower tax bracket in the future. And if that's the case, then this investment begins to make less and less sense. It definitely makes less and less sense if you plan to hold assets like the rich. Number two is that you lose all the tax savings from capital gains when they are held in an IRA, right? So the way that an IRA works is that you put your money into the account, and those funds are then invested into stocks, real estate, etc. Now, once those assets appreciate in value, that is called a capital gain. Now, if you hold the investment directly, meaning it's not in an IRA, so let's say you purchase some stocks or some real estate, and then it appreciates, you get that capital gain. That capital gain is called portfolio income by the IRS. Portfolio income is generally taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income, especially for those that are in a very high ordinary income tax bracket. However, if you hold those same investments in an IRA, so let's say you purchase some stock within the IRA, and that appreciates in value, you have a capital gain, you completely lose those tax savings because you're not being taxed right now on that income. Once you pull that money out of the account, it will be taxed at the ordinary income rate. So effectively, the portfolio income tax rate is not in the equation at all. You are taxed at the full ordinary income tax rate once you pull that money out of the account. This means from a certain perspective that you are just throwing away money. Number three is probably the worst one on this list. If there is one thing to avoid in this world of investing, it is investing in real estate within an IRA. The reason is because you lose all or much of the tax savings that you get from real estate that makes real estate so attractive in the first place. For example, depreciation, as many of you know, is the bread and butter of real estate. It turns good deals into amazing deals into spectacular deals. The reason is because it offsets the passive income you get from those rental properties, right? For example, as Tom points out in the book, if you bring in $10,000 of passive income after all the expenses are paid, and you have a depreciation deduction of, say, $15,000, then $10,000 of that $15,000 of depreciation deduction goes to offset your passive income. So you owe no tax on the passive income, and you also show a $5,000 loss. Well, that $5,000 loss, if you're in the, say, 40% tax bracket, well, all of a sudden that means that the government owes you $2,000. The problem with holding real estate in an IRA, just like with capital gains, you lose the tax savings that you would have got from the depreciation had you just held the investment outside of the IRA. The reason is because when the real estate is within the IRA, you don't owe any taxes on it each year. You only owe taxes on income within the IRA once you pull it out. Well, when you pull it out, everything is taxed at the ordinary income rate. So again, you miss out on the advantages from the depreciation. In this example, you would have missed out on $2,000 in tax savings. So this is a way to throw money directly out your front door, all right? It really makes hardly any sense to invest in real estate within an IRA. Tom describes it as multiplying -1 by -1. What he's getting at is that if you hold a tax-protecting asset such as real estate within another tax-protecting asset, such as an IRA, they are effectively canceling each other out. Another disadvantage to holding real estate within the IRA is that it will be harder for you to obtain financing on that loan because generally speaking, they don't like to lend to retirement accounts. They would rather lend to corporations or individuals. The reason is because you cannot personally guarantee paying back that loan if it's on an asset within an IRA. IRAs function much like a trust. Effectively, from the eyes of the bank, this is a riskier investment and therefore they will be more reluctant to give you funds for the asset. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is definitely harder to do so. This is bad news because debt, just like depreciation, is another major contributor to the massive returns you hear about in real estate. Being able to use someone else's money, aka debt, which is tax-free dollars, allows you to leverage that money to buy assets, which puts money in your pocket, thereby boosting your returns all around. Another major problem with these accounts is the penalties that apply if you take money out early. For example, under a 401k, you can't take any money out until you are 59 and a half. If you do, then that money is called gross income and it is subject to a 10% additional tax. Now, there are exceptions to this rule in which you can get your money out early without having so many penalties, but generally speaking, if you take money out early, you will pay more taxes then than if you would if you waited until 59 and a half. Limitations are another sticking point to these plans. For example, with an IRA, once you hit 70.5 years old, you are forced to begin selling assets off because the government wants to get their money. They want to ensure that they get that tax revenue from you before you die. Right, and economically speaking, this makes sense. If you put the money in there tax-free, the government just wants to make sure that they get their money. All right, I get it. Now, coincidentally, if you want to avoid this, do a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is the opposite of a traditional IRA in the sense that you put money in the account, which is already after-tax dollars, and then you pay no tax once you get the money out of the account years from now. Under this plan, the government does not limit you and start forcing you to sell off assets at a given time. Regardless, point being that the penalties and the limitations on these accounts are what makes these investment vehicles less profitable and less attractive in my opinion. All right, for example, for me, why not invest in real estate? Why not put my money in an asset which produces passive income? I use depreciation to offset that income and effectively pay no tax on that cash flow. Well, what does that mean? That means that I've effectively created this same exact tax savings that I would have gotten from an IRA, but I have way more control because I can sell my real estate anytime I feel like it without any penalties. Now, I'm not saying don't invest in an IRA. I'm not saying that my way is superior or whatever. All I'm saying is that it's interesting to think about the way that I can supplement using a government program and effectively creating my own program through smart financial planning. Sure, there is more risk in investing in real estate, but again, that comes to your overall personal risk tolerance, right? For me, I think it's a smarter investment decision. So in summary, be very, very conscious about your tax savings plan. Understand that these plans are put in place with the presumption that you will be poorer, essentially, in the future when you take the money out of the account, right? Your tax will be lower at that time. Also understand that you are losing all the tax advantages that come with capital gains and depreciation from assets that you hold within these funds. Also, don't forget that these funds come with a handful of limitations and penalties if you take your money out prematurely. And lastly, outside of all of that, inflation itself might kill you by the time you take your money out of the account. Now, once again, this video is just to inform you of a very interesting take on this topic. I want to make it clear that you should make your own choice. All right, investing is your own personal choice, your own risk tolerance. All of that plays a factor. So find out what works for you and go with that. Whatever you do, I definitely recommend speaking with a professional financial advisor before making any major investment decisions. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a like down below, subscribe for the journey, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.